Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Boone, and welcome to Conversations with Nicole. Today, my guest is children's book author jjallen. She has published 3 books, including You're My Favorite Everything and There's a Bug in the Tub and It Won't Get Out. She has a new children's book coming out in the spring. She's involved with several charities and literacy programs. She is from Winter Park, Florida, but now calls South Carolina home. She has a house full of people when they all get together in her family, 4 children, 11 grandchildren, another on the way, and her husband is Christopher Holman. It is so good to have you on the show today, JJ. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Nicole. What a privilege to be here.
Well, listen, when we started talking about you coming on the show, I was so excited. A friend of mine showed me your books, and I was like, gosh, I need to talk to her. So I'm really glad that you could be with me today. And so I really want to start with, how did your love for writing and children's books begin?
Well, I think it probably starts with just a love for children, and just, I always say I chase pure things, and children are the purest. And so they're the best content and the best I guess, inspirations one could have when you're looking for something pure. So I tend to hang around kids a lot, with the grandchildren, and just great inspiration. But it probably started years ago. I used to volunteer babysit as a teenager. I was the only volunteer babysitter in my community, but I just loved hanging out with little kids, and I have a degree in child psychology, so that may have inspired it some. But yeah, it just kind of started that, and then just storytelling, writing stories, and it's just the two just kind of fused together.
I love that so much. And definitely children are always inspirational when it comes to content, and just watching them grow and the things that they say. They can be very comical, very insightful. And I'm sure that's a part of what inspired you with your books. When did you actually start writing? Where did the love for writing first start?
Well, yeah, I think everybody is a writer, right? And one of the questions I always ask in any assemblies or book signings I do, people say, I want to be an author. And the first thing I say was, have you ever written a story? And everyone says, yes, I have. I go, well, then you're actually an author. So a published author is a different thing. So I've always written stories or told stories. They're great time fillers when you have a chaotic group around you, or just to grab someone's attention, or diversion tactics. So I would just tell stories, whether it started with once upon a time, or in a faraway land, or, yesterday, whatever the intro was. So just started telling stories. And then what I found is I would end up repeating stories of things that the children actually did. And the stories just took on a life. My daughter would say, tell so-and-so what one of her children did. And so then I just started writing those stories more physically. I can make a story in my head in 5 minutes, but to get it to paper is a little bit of a different process. But I didn't publish my first book until age 46. So at that point, the goal was maybe every 2 or 3 years publish. So
yeah. And so you have 3 books out now. Give me a little bit of details about each of the books that you've written so far.
Sure. There's a Bug in the Tub and It Won't Get Out is the first one. And that's just the story about my eldest granddaughter, Delilah. She's actually the co-author, and she actually did most of the editing and helped me with the illustrations. So it's just a story of her spending the day at a grandparent's house, and then she takes a bath and there's a bug in the tub. And it's just the unveiling of the comedy of the event. So it's an easy 5-minute read. It's a great bedtime story. And that's what I was kind of looking for. One of the things that my grandchildren always did when it was bedtime, they would bring me these War and Peace novels to read. And I'm like, okay, kids, you get 5 minutes, 10 minutes reading time. I'm not reading some biography. So I thought, you know what, I'll just create these little short stories, where it had, obviously a climax in the book, and then, resolution at the end. And there was an antagonist and maybe a protagonist. Right. So that's fine. Yeah, so that's the first one. And then the second one is You're My Favorite Everything. And that's just a love story. It's a love story of basically how we feel about our children and all of the insightfulness that they bring us. And, I always say, you think you love your husband, you think you love your parents, you think you love your siblings, and then you have a child and you go, I don't love any of you people. This is what I love. Yeah. So it's really just that kind of love story, and just the awareness that comes to you once you become a parent. So, and then Proof of Tooth is just the story about a little girl who loses her tooth, her first tooth, and it's a true story, and then loses the tooth inside the house, and what we do to trick the tooth fairy into believing that we have proof of tooth. So
Oh, those are just all great stories. I loved hearing them all, and can certainly
thank
relate to
you.
reading to my children as well, and it being one of my favorite things to do when they were little. So talk about your book that's coming out in the spring of this year.
Yeah, that's Proof of Tooth, and we're just finalizing some of the illustrations right now. Some of them came back. I wanted different colors. It should have come out actually last June, but with COVID, I just pushed it off, and because I can't do any book signings, and the world stopped. So, and in the world of things to complain about, that wasn't even close to being on the agenda. So I thought I'll just wait a year. So it'll be out right around June 1st. We're just tweaking some of the illustration. It's been written for quite some time. I've got book 4 and 5 in the process, but I really just take my time with it because what I find is I can write the story literally in 5 minutes, Nicole, but the content that you write to create one illustration is sometimes pages and pages, because the illustration is so important to children's literature, because that's what evolves the children into thinking on their own without any illustrations, and just creates that love of reading. And that's my goal. My reader is really like 3 to 7, and I'm just trying to hook them. That's all I'm trying to do, is hook them and then hand them off to the next level of reading, a more elevated type of reading, but really just to get into the illustrations and a fun, quick story that keeps their attention on a short span.
That makes perfect sense. And it's so important to read to children and get them engaged in reading at an early age, because that's where you learn everything, is through reading, and books and are so important. So I know that's part of your mission as well, in writing these children's books and being involved in doing your live readings on your Facebook, but also literacy in general. Books are everything.
They are.
And talk a little bit about your future plans. So this book's coming out. You talk about anything else that you have planned on the horizon.
Well, as you said, with 11 children, I get 11 grandchildren. I have a lot of content and a lot of stories. So what I deal with right now is each grandchild wants a book written about them. So I have to go in order. So I have to have my children stop having more children, so I can catch up to the number 12 that's going to be born this, in the next month. So I try to, like, the second book has 3 of my grandchildren in it, and then the next one has 1. So they all want their own book. So that's kind of the goal. You double up, but I have a couple other projects. One is the next one, I believe, is going to be called It's Your Lucky Day. And I have a granddaughter that every time she comes into the house, she looks at me and she goes, "It's your lucky day. I'm here." So she's 5, and it's just a hilarious attitude that she has. So I said, I know what your book is going to be called. It's going to be called It's Your Lucky Day. So
that's so cute. I tell you, kids are just the best. All their one-liners,
they are the best.
They are really walking books, as you would
right.
So who inspired you with your writing? Do you have some authors that you admire, look to?
Absolutely. I like the ones that are just more whimsical. So Shel Silverstein, definitely one of my favorites. I have all of his books, and even some of his art, and Dr. Seuss. I know he's controversial right now, but I still love Dr. Seuss, and I have owned pieces of his art and things like that. There's just a purity about it. I also like, Roald Dahl and Ramona Quimby's writing series, so there's so many just children's authors, but I like, many adult authors, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte. I love, Thomas Hardy. I love those writers, the more the Victorian writers. But when it comes to the children, I'd probably say Shel Silverstein and Dr. Seuss. Mine are very lyrical. My books are very lyrical and easy, light reads, repetitive, because again, it's just trying to be inspirational in the beginning for a young reader.
The Giving Tree. That was always my favorite. So you are giving back in so many ways and making a difference in the lives of so many, especially people. I think that's awesome. So as we close, any advice for someone who says, I've been wanting to write a book, and it is harder than you think. So what would be the advice you would give them?
That's the question I get asked most from children, and I just say, write your stories, and when you have an idea, write that note down immediately. I know right now we probably do that as adults. As soon as I have an idea, it can be gone quicker than it comes in my brain. So I make sure that I write notes, and I take a lot of resource anything that may be inspirational to you. Just write it down. I'm sure you probably do the same thing, in the sense of, oh, that's a good idea, and you have to write it down immediately or it's going to be gone. So I think resourcing and then compiling, and just the big thing, Nicole, with anything that you really have your heart and soul into, be patient with yourself. Don't put yourself on a timeline, give goals, but don't beat yourself up if you don't get to that timeline. So be patient with yourself. Like I said, first book published at age 46, and I hope to have, 20 or 30 done before, this time of mine is over. So
that's great advice. And I agree with everything you say. Give yourself some space and be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever is supposed to happen will happen. And just quickly tell folks where they can get your books.
Oh, I'm everywhere. Let's see. I'm at Amazon. Obviously, it's always the easiest, but Target.com, Walmart.com, Barnes & Noble. You can also go through my website, which is jjallenbookauthor.com. I can send you signed copies, and they're actually a little bit cheaper through my own website. But yeah, I'm literally everywhere. If you just Google my name and book author, you'll find lots of resources and places to buy them. So
I'll make that information available too in the description.
Thank you.
KJ, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today for Conversations with Nicole. It's been a lot of fun. It's been inspirational. And thank you for all you're doing to make the lives of children, their parents, their grandparents, and so many others better.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nicole. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. And folks, that's going to do it for this edition of Conversations with Nicole. Until we see you again, we hope you have a great day.